Hey everyone, it's the Inner Nerd. In my last video you saw me play hangman with myself. I showed you my tiny pizza cutter. I assembled Kitty Hawk's fitter. Showed you some cleaning supplies. Compared two very similar shades of green. Did some streaking. And carved a boot print out of an eraser. If you missed all this good stuff or want to watch it again, click the link in the card above or follow the link in the description below. Before we start the video, if you'd like to see the products I'm using, click the subtitles icon at the bottom of the screen, which is bouncing up and down now. Anyway, let's get to it. So I started off with a block of styrofoam, cut to 400 by 300mm, which I painted black. I'll be using AK's Concrete Terrains for the foundation of the display. The product is a gritty paste pre-coloured for concrete, and can be mixed with water to create a thinner consistency. I use it straight out of the pot though, and spread roughly onto the styrofoam using a palette knife. To get a nice even spread, I use the ruler to scrape the paste over the base without applying pressure downwards. The paste doesn't go very far, so it will take multiple applications to get the foundations uniform. Having said that, 2 coats of the base only took half a pot, so you can cover quite a lot of area with the contents. Any uncovered areas are easily filled by applying a small amount into the gap, using a straight edge to smooth out. After 1 coat of the concrete paste I left to dry overnight, and then applied 1 more layer in the same way to build up the depth of the foundation. Next was to mark out the slabs. I used the model as a reference for the angle and size of the slabs, then marked the origin line to measure from. Looking at my reference images, the slabs look roughly the same length as the wheelbase, so I marked this directly from the model too. Using these marks I placed out the remaining slabs with a pen. I made the slabs 20% longer than the width to make them rectangular. To mark the separation between the slabs, I used a skewer which I ran along a straight edge. The concrete is soft enough to be chipped away by this and creates a sunken join line between the 2 slabs. Next was to add the texture and detail to the base. Starting with some formation markings, I masked off an area at the front of the aircraft. I'd seen this marking on one of my reference images, and it seemed to be angled away from the cockpit access area, so positioned it relative to my model. Using Mr. Surfacer 1000 white, I airbrushed in the detail, applying a heavy coat in an attempt to fill in some of the rough concrete texture and be more like a solid painted line. I had seen more formation markings on different images, but again didn't want to go too far as it would quickly become too busy. Comparing this to images I was working from, I wasn't happy with the depth or width of the gap, so I increased this using a scalpel blade by scraping away the edge on either side. The good thing about doing it this way is that an uneven edge can be made, which is also chamfered, much like a real concrete slab. As my aim was to make the airfield look as though a rain shower had passed, I made some deeper areas where I could place puddles later. I used the same chipping technique as before until the depth of the crack appeared deep enough to hold water. Next I broke the uniformity of the foundation by chipping away areas inside the slabs. This would replicate broken and cracked areas of the concrete. It's quite easy to go overboard with this, so I kept it to a minimum so the airfield didn't start to look destroyed. Next I move on to add the dirt and mossy texture between each slab. I used AK streaking grime, which is a very dark green colour, and apply directly to the foundation. If you don't have this product, then a dark greeny brown paint will be suitable, as it's just to get a darker colour in the cracks. AK's neutral wash served as a good colour for dampened concrete. I used this straight from the bottle and applied around the slab edges to begin with. I thinned the wash directly on the base to feather the edge, as it was too sharp to replicate a slowly drying piece of concrete. I wanted to add larger damp patches to again break the uniformity. I added neutral wash around the edge of the patch I wanted to make, and then thinned the wash towards the middle. This created a more dried out look compared to the ones on the edge. The base still looks a bit flat, so I added AK's rain marks effects along the very edge of each slab. You can make this from any light beige coloured oil if you don't have this product. Using this created a highlight along the edges and made them stand out a little more. I used a dry flat brush to drag oil inwards towards the centre of each slab to make a more feathered edge. Again using rain marks effects, I highlighted the areas inside the dirt and damp to make a higher contrast and give the impression of a more layered amount of weathering and dirt. Tyre marks were made using a deep brown colour, lightly airbrushed to make faint tracks. The final step was to make the oil, grease and fuel spills underneath the aircraft. I placed the model back on to get a rough area where I could focus on the staining. Then using AK's fuel stains, I applied in the same way as other washes and thinned directly on the concrete to fade the effect. AK still water was used next to place the puddles in the wet areas. Still water is completely clear and acrylic based, so I added a single drop of khaki into the gel-like mix to dye the water a more puddle-like colour. The water can also be thinned down using water or acrylic thinner to get a more fluid consistency. Then I applied it straight into the deeper chipped areas I'd carved away earlier. It may take several passes with this as it shrinks quite considerably once dry, but the self-leveling properties make it easy for reapplication. Again, trying to keep this to a minimum, I concentrated only on the deeper areas to apply this texture. To make the ground appear wet, I made a thin clear mix of the still water and applied it over a damp area, almost like a varnish to make the concrete shine. Now that the main work is complete, it's time to tidy up the edges. I mask off the top with regular masking tape and fill in the centre with all the reference images I'd used. Then with the regular rattle can, I just sprayed the edges to get them smooth. And with that, the fitter could be placed back on for one final time. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, give me a like and subscribe to my channel to follow my latest projects. To see more projects like this, why not jump into one of my playlists? And for some behind the scenes, give me a follow on Instagram at theinnernerd_insta.